And we're right back live in the studios of WLCN, Lincoln Country, high on the hill here in Atlanta. 96.3, 648-5510. In case anybody had any questions at all or comments for Mr. Paul Beaver, author of Abraham Lincoln in Logan County, Illinois. An excellent publication, very well done just physically, just for appearance alone. The writing, the type, the font, the typesetting, the pictures, very easily read, very enjoyable the way you put this thing together. Did the publishers then help you on the compilation of the way in which all this material was assimilated?
No, that's what's strange. See, that's where I don't understand the modern world. The publisher,
I think you do pretty well.
was handed a little disc, and that was the book. Phil Bertoni said, "Here's the book," and they took this little disc and they put it in this computer over there at Champaign, and their press printed out what you saw. That's beyond me. It's beyond my comprehension how that can be done. But they did take my mock-up so that when he could, as they were printing it, he could look through and say, well, that's the right page and so on. But
so the compilation,
I thought they had to type the whole thing in and all that. Shows up a little bit behind times.
The compilation that went to your printers over in Champaign went on a CD.
Right. Everything was done.
That's incredible.
They made 2 or 3 little changes, and changes are costly, but they were nice about it. They didn't do it. But no, the whole book, it was Phil Bertoni put it together. God love him. I'm glad he retired from the Navy or from teaching and came home.
Yeah, that's been an asset to have the Bertoni, Phil and his cousin Jay Waldo back home. Mm-hmm. 2 great gentlemen, 2 great families, and both of them been just a real asset to our area.
Oh yes.
I remember the day when Waldo went off to the Point. Good-looking young fella. Oh. All the girls were swooning. No, seriously, a great, solid family. Everybody at my age remembers Bertoni's restaurant over there in Mount Pulaski, high on the top of the hill.
Well, I couldn't have done it without Phil. You know how many times I could have written that in the book, and I did. Phil, you know I couldn't have done this without you, because he had those skills. I think what was fortunate is that everybody's skill was a little different. My friend Jackie, lives down the street. She's a meticulous one. I'd get a phone call at 10:30. She'd be thinking about something. Did you remember to do this? Now, that you can't buy that kind of help. Somebody who cared enough to worry about it to say, did you get that in there?
The dedication.
And Teresa they were like that. They didn't write the book. They didn't know. They said they were learning history right along, and they felt. I got a nice note from Teresa. And she said, what I like about this is that my granddaughter studies this later on. Her grandmother had a little hand in it. So they felt they were being a part of history. Well,
a little hand kind of makes a major contribution, though. That's the point.
They were major. And sometimes I just knew enough to get out of the way. They're the ones that arranged those pictures in order in the book. Now, you say, well, what's hard about that? The pictures, if you look, match the text.
I was going to say they have to correspond to the text.
And they did it, and they were so into it. Well, I just went up. I thought we'd go up and talk to Richard. We were at the library because I could see they were intensely. You can't possibly buy that kind of help, the kind of dedication, because everybody felt, look, we live in Logan County. This is going to be something for our lifetime here, and they felt a part of it. And some people like Richard too had moved in, felt it the same way.
That's an interesting thing. Richard and Ron Keller both new to the community, so to speak. And they just assimilated themselves into the depth and the history of what we have here, and that's a real asset.
Yes, it is.
That's an attribute that's not easily come by.
And Richard, of course, came at things a different way. If I got him a T-shirt, it was going to say, "I dig good bindings," because from day one, he said, on a book like this, they're going to be pulling it apart and Xeroxing it. So we got to have a binding that'll handle it. I never thought about that. To me, a binding is a binding. Was it a rose, a rose, a rose? Well, it wasn't to Richard, who knew the difference. And by the way, the people who did the book, if you want to go up to the library and you want to Xerox it, no problem. They gave him an unbound copy. So if you want to copy a page, you can just click it out and put it on the copier. Just little things that people think about that he thought about. I never would have thought about that. I was just talking about having help and people helping you. I always remember my dear friend Fred Hoppin, of course, you know very well. And I think Fred said something to me that I remember, and I used to tell my college classes this. Fred said, I never got anywhere or got to do anything that somebody didn't open a door for me. And then he said, and the trick is to know that the door is open. That somebody's going to help you along the way, open it. And this help that I had, I never would have realized how much I depended on, because there were a few days when you just about don't want to ever look at it again. And I'm sure all writers feel that way. But the girls were always, I call them girls, they like it, so, you know, but they were always up. Yeah. Okay, we'll get it, don't worry about it. And that helps a lot.
It wasn't mandatory then that your staff, as it were, be steeped in history.
No.
It was just that they were people who could think on their feet.
Yeah, it was funny. They'd read something and say, look, I didn't know that. I said, good, because you're the... But, you know, another nice thing, think about this. They came at it from a different point of view than Ron and I did. Ron and I have training in this field, and we were taught you're supposed to do it this way and all that. Well, a lot of that I had came out of the Dark Ages. Ron was a little more modern in that. They looked at it as the general public would look at it. And if it didn't read good to them, then it wasn't going to read good to the general public. So we tried to stay away from
They were a barometer.
Right. And they'd say, oh, that won't work. But you have to have friends that'll do that.
Well, and be honest with you.
Be honest about it, because there's no help. There's no help, and that's where Lynn was such great help. She didn't care if she was dealing with two college professors. It didn't bother Lynn. She'd been one, too.
Yeah, she knows.
And this was her field, and she was wonderful. And Rod said, just must have been like having not really quite like having a sergeant, but when Lynn said something, after just a little while, nobody even bothered. Lynn said, you could check. I may be wrong. No, you're not going to be wrong.
Not so much.
But that's wonderful help. And it's all came from our community.
Paul, from the time this seed began to germinate up here, or maybe over here, how long? When did you first start working with the concept of this?
Well, several years ago, I wanted to do it, and I don't know. As time passes and as you lose people, you start to say, I think that gets to you. Wait a minute, this time's passing, and my wife would say to me, if you need to get started on this, if you're going to do it. And
Sue was right.
And she was right, and Betty. And talking to that did Betty, and I'll tell you off the air when that was, and you'll see why it was really a poignant moment.
Surely.
And she said, you just have to do that. And I said that night when I had the 8 of them there. Of course, got some tears, you know, but that's okay. Betty knew. Betty just said, this is too important not to do. If you don't do it, who's going to do it?
You know, it's interesting, Judy.
But I worked on it hard for a year. And
I'm sure you did.
The last few weeks, we didn't do hardly anything except get together.
It's kind of interesting here, and Judy and I talk a lot about the little communities and the values of these small communities. We mentioned Betty, of course, whom we all know and love, representative of the folks down in Elkhart, and how they're working so hard to keep that history alive. And go over here to Vinegar Hill, and you've got Phil and come up here just a few. Yeah, it's marvelous that you have folks in those communities who work so hard to keep that history alive, to pass down. Unfortunately, it takes somebody who has the time and, more importantly, the inclination. And the inclination is the big thing there, because a lot of our youngsters, they're too busy to do that, and that's unfortunate.
Well, Logan County is really very fortunate, because Mount Plasking's got a real strong, Elkhart's very strong.
Middletown's
very strong. They've done a lot of work over there. Emden now is working on it. I mean, it's not the New Holland group, but we mentioned in the book, and that's one thing, one of the reasons that I knew I'd have to publish this myself, because one of the things I wanted to put in the book, which makes it a little provincial, I know, was a list of people from our county who've done things to preserve our history. Les Sheridan and Jackie, and Jim and Betty, some of those are pretty easy, that have done it. And there's a lot of others, but just some of these little towns, some of them help collect their county histories and their town histories and that. So I know we'd leave some out. I know Guy Fraker said the more you write, the more you're going to leave out, and that's true. But, you know, if you have 6 people, you're probably going to get the big 6. But then what about 7? So Anyway, that's one thing I wanted to do, was to kind of have a record of people who have done our history. And I think that with the little-known stories are the two things that make it unique.
Well, we've appreciated the presence of Lincoln and Logan County's premier author here of the history of this area. We appreciate the fact that you and your confreres did a yeoman's job in compiling this. It took a great deal of dedication and expertise, and we appreciate the fact you'd come up with this. And I'd like to remind the folks that your book is available in the bookstores here in town. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, Prairie Years. It'll probably be out in some other places. Frankly, we just haven't had time. I was kind of pooped out after we got it out, so I haven't gotten it around. But Prairie Years is standing, and I think Ron's going to have some at the college, and probably, I think Phil wants to take some to Pulaski and Denver. Tom Schwartz, who's a good friend of ours in Logan County, is a state historian, is going to try to see if we can get some down there at the Lincoln Museum. So,
well,
that'd be a good place.
We thank you very much. We always try to close with a little quote here on Viewpoint. John Wooden, the old California coach, said, "Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do." And Paul Beaver exemplified that in the completion of this book.
Most certainly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.